You're watching Business Edge on New Central Television. We actually skip Market Watch to look at this very important situation as it affects the NNPCL. According to details, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Ltd has recently found itself at the center of controversy, facing allegations of owing international oil traders a staggering $6.8 billion and failing to remit funds to the Federation account since January. And in response to these claims, NNPCL's Chief Corporate Communications Officer, Olufemi Soneye, issued a statement categorically denying the accusations. He emphasized that the nature of oil trading often involves credit transactions, which can lead to outstanding balances, but clarified that NNPCLs are fulfilling its obligations. So this morning, to discuss this, I am being joined by Femi Oladehin, is the senior partner, Argentil Capital Management Ltd. He actually joins me from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Oladehin, for joining us.
Good morning, and it's good to be here again.
So NNPCL acknowledged credit transactions in oil trading with international traders, but denies debt being owed. So I'm wondering, if someone supplies a commodity without full payments being made for that commodity, isn't that debt being owed?
So it's a lot of semantics, right? The reality here is the way trade happens all over the world is usually not exactly all the time via immediate cash payment. So there are usually credit terms that form the basis of transactions. So for things like crude oil, what generally happens is that for petroleum products, if I wanted to order, say, a cargo of PMS, what would happen is that I would open a letter of credit with my bank, which will be provided to the bank of the supplier. Usually letters of credit are for either a 60, 90-day or 120-day period, and depending on what is agreed by the two parties. And then those letters of credit are then cashed at the end of the expiration of that period. So if I get a cargo, say maybe in June, the possibility is that I'm only going to be paying for that cargo in probably another 6 months or 3 months' time, when the transaction actually, crystallizes. So, but the issue here is whether NNPC is owing and whether they have the capacity to pay. Look, there's a lot of disservice that the NNPC and the Nigerian government have been doing to themselves and directly to the Nigerian people, and that's that lack of transparency as to whether there is a liability or there's a cost that comes to the products that we've been consuming. So let me give you an example. In the past year, we know that the president came out in June, on May 29th last year, and said subsidy is gone. But the reality is that we know that since about August last year, the price at the pump in Nigeria has been significantly lower than the price on the global market. So which means intuitively there is a subsidy and somebody is paying for that subsidy. But the government has consistently denied it. The reality is that the implication of that is we're selling petroleum products at a cost that is lower than the cost at which we bought it. And that means that there is a gap that needs to be filled. And this gap is what is creating a significant stress on the balance sheet of the NNPC. And until we actually bring this truth out and admit it, we'll keep creating this problem for the NNPC and making it almost a company that's almost insolvent at the moment.
So we have a government that is not coming out with the actual truth when it comes to subsidy payments. We also have an NNPC that seems as though its operations are not totally clear to all partners and all Nigerians. What does that say about a government and, of course, this particular sector of the economy?
Look, I mean, the government, you would understand the government's conundrum in this. The president has come out openly to say that the subsidy regime was gone. To then have a situation where that same government comes out a few months later and admits that there is a subsidy can be a faux pas, right? So people are going to decide whether they want to bail that cat and accept that openly that there is a subsidy. But whether the government denies it or admits it is besides the point. From an accounting and from a cash flow point of view, we know that there is a subsidy. Fuel prices should be around 1,100, 1,200 in Nigeria today. On average prices, we are at about 700. So there is a 500 naira thereabout subsidy, given the current exchanges and the current price of crude. The implication of that is somebody is paying for that subsidy because the traders are not going to take a loss just because they like Nigeria. Now, the government has to, eventually bear this cut. This is not something that we can leave in perpetuity without resolving it one way or the other. There are all sorts of numbers that have been flying around. This morning, there's a news report that says that NNPC is not paying dividends to the Nigerian government and taxes simply because of subsidy payments. But again, no one is coming out to accept and that is actually the reality. What government should be doing is coming out to Nigerians and telling them, in a very transparent way, what it actually costs to deliver petrol to the Nigerian market. I want to say something before I come back to you. A few years ago, we used to have what was called the triple PRA template. The triple PRA template was a template that showed transparently how Nigeria's build-up of pricing was done. The truth is that we need to go back to that so that it becomes very clear to Nigerians that the real cost of delivering petrol is X, and you are buying it at the pump at Y. So there is a subsidy, and it's not corruption. It's not that anyone is stealing the money. It's just because the government is paying part of your petrol costs. And once the government does that, Nigerians actually have to accept it as the reality.
Okay, so now that you have actually talked about the letter of credits and the fact that we see that $6.8 billion is being owed by the NNPCL, and the fact that we have seen increase in allocations to the tiers of government in a couple of months, how do we reconcile that in terms of its ability, that is the NNPCL, to remit funds into the Federation account? Because it seems as though probably there's a priority in terms of what comes in and where these funds are being expended when there's a debt to be paid.
So you must understand that the NNPC hasn't actually done a lot of remittances to the Federation accounts in the last 1 year. The increase or the growth in numbers that you're seeing has actually come from other sources of government revenues, which is largely taxes, custom duties, and to some lesser extent, some proceeds from crude oil that belong to the Federation. So those are just standard realities. Now, when the PIA was enacted, the objective of the PIA was to make the NNPC profitable, such that the Nigerian government could continuously and consistently get dividends from the NNPC. Unfortunately, the subsidy conundrum has made it very difficult for NNPC to be able to deliver the sort of profitability that it should have. Now, I would probably not say it's delivering profitability because it depends on how they are accounting for it in their books. But what is happening is that NNPC is making money on the trading side. They're probably making money even on the crude oil side, but they're losing a lot of that money through the flows that goes to the payment of subsidy. Now, if subsidy was suddenly to disappear from the Nigerian market today, then it means that the amount of cash available to the Federation substantially increases from the current levels that we have. So think about it this way. Every naira of subsidy that is being paid today is actually naira that should have gone to the Federation account to be shared along the 3 tiers of government. And that is a trade-off that we're obviously accepting as a country today. And the only way we're going to be able to solve that problem is to actually ensure that there's increased transparency in the pricing of petroleum products.
So basically that would mean that the claim that NNPCL, of course, did put out that it remains the largest contributor of monthly tax revenue is insignificant when we look at, what comes in terms of revenue and what is being expended.
So look, the reality here is there is significant upside that is available to the NNPC. That upside is basically getting help from the Federation towards getting some level of transparency into its entire arrangement. Now, when that transparency happens, it also improves the capacity of NNPC to go and raise capital or raise funding for its ancillary businesses. So again, we're talking about two different things here. First is we need to increase oil production. An increase in oil production immediately means that there is increase in the amount of cash that's available to the NNPC, and there's also an increase in the cash that goes to the Federation account as a result. Now, second level is now to ensure that we're able to actually put on the table a transparent price for petroleum products. Remove that subsidy completely and transparently and let Nigerians know what it really means for them in terms of inflation, what it means for them in terms of pricing, and what it means for them in terms of government finances. And I think when we do that, we strengthen the NNPC to be able to trade as a proper trading company, and Nigeria will be the better for it.
But that would actually put the Nigerian government in a dilemma, because Nigerians are saying that, hey, this removal of fuel subsidy seems to be biting hard on Nigerians in terms of their pockets, what they have to pay at the at the fuel pumps, and the fact that inflation is skyrocketing because it has attendant effects on other costs of living and consumables to be bought and all that. So do you think, even at this time, because earlier on you said that the price of fuel should be around 1,200 naira if truly fuel subsidy is gone, do you think that would be wise enough for government to do that now that the citizens are clamoring for a reversal in that policy?
Look, Nigeria cannot afford a reversal of the subsidy. It's not even a conversation we should be having. The truth is that the biggest problem we have as a country is the trust deficit between the government and its people. Look, and if that trust deficit is enhanced or breached, you would actually have a situation where Nigerians will accept the current reality. If you go to Ghana, it costs about $1 to buy a liter of petrol in Ghana. That's actually the true cost of petrol anywhere in the world. It's about $1 per liter. So Nigeria is probably the only one of the few countries that still continues to subsidize its petroleum prices. Yes, there will be an impact on the average Nigerian, and we've seen that impact in the last 12 months. But I think that what is possible is a capital allocation conversation. Who is best able to efficiently use the resources available to them to deliver value? Now, imagine if Nigeria was not paying a subsidy, but we were able to enhance the agricultural sector, we're going to be able to improve the education sector, we're able to improve the quality of infrastructure, and thus bring down the cost of doing business in Nigeria. The average Nigerian is going to be the beneficiary. The problem we have in Nigeria is that we're always concerned with our short-term comforts, both the government and the people. And the truth is that no nation is ever built by sacrificing long-term gain for short-term benefits. And that is a trade-off that we must be willing to accept. It's difficult now, but if we take the right decisions and we put the right building blocks for nation building in place, and the country is going to be the better for it. And we must be willing to take that bait now, honestly, because it's not going to get easier. Crude oil prices are going to continue to go up. The currency is going to continue to be under pressure. And the implication of that is that subsidy will continue to remain on the table as long as we don't have a transparent pricing regime. It's as simple as that. There's no easy solution to this problem.
Okay, but we still need to keep asking the questions, because Nigerians are equally asking, for how long would they have to endure if they cannot hold on to short-term benefits? Let's hang on to that a bit and look at the areas that has to do with this NNPCL, a state-owned entity, has regulatory or regulations rather that is meant to, oversee its operations. There's an act that is meant to be binding on the operations of the NNPCL, and you have hammered a lot this morning on the issue around transparency, trust deficits, and open, book in terms of the operations of the NNPCL. Why is it that the regulations guiding the operations of NNPCL are not being effected or implemented to ensure that it is transparent and everybody has an idea of what comes in, what is being traded, what goes out in terms of the finances of this, enterprise?
I guess it's the Nigerian problem. I mean, that's the easy answer to that. The reality is that the Nigerian government and NNPC are usually scared of that level of transparency for whatever reasons. And I'm not going to postulate as to why that is the reason. I believe that, it's the Singaporean Prime Minister that once said that I would never disclose my reserves, because if I did disclose my reserves, then it tells you that you know what my firepower is. But of course, the IMF and those bodies will tell you, oh, you must disclose your reserves so that we know how much trade you can do. But the reality is that, transparency is important, especially for government. But there is a national interest as well that needs to be protected, and finding a balance between the two of them is quite important. Now, what the biggest problem we have with NNPC prior to now was when it was a corporation, it was seen as probably the most corrupt corporation in the Nigerian government system. Now that it's transited into a private company, even though it's still the government, that's the only shareholder. The expectation is that transparency should improve just because of the usual corporate governance that has to do with with private and limited liability companies. However, there is the fact that even though NNPC has transited into a company, it is still being treated like a corporation, like an appendage of government. That is where the problem is. The government has to actually detach itself from NNPC completely, allow the company to run as an independent, with a board that is independent, with a management team that is globally sourced and hired. And then you can use that sort of organization to go out into the market and raise money for its own operations and bring in a lot more transparency. What needs to happen here is the government needs to hands off NNPC, probably sell a portion of that company to the Nigerian masses, and ensure that the management of NNPC are accountable to Nigerians through a board, through a shareholder structure that ensures full accountability and transparency. That is the long-term solution to the NNPC.
Well, Femi, now we are talking about an enterprise that is short in morality, an enterprise that is short in terms of transparency, an enterprise that is short in terms of even having a stable price for this commodity, an enterprise that is also short on even ensuring the availability of fuel for the teeming Nigerian population. So this solution that you prefer, do you think it would even solve the most, poignant issue affecting Nigerians now, which is fuel scarcity?
Look, the first scarcity problem we're dealing with right now is, honestly, without any iota of doubt, is because of the subsidy. The reality is that today, the only person who can import petrol into Nigeria is the NNPC, simply because the price at the market is not reflective of the true price. So you see, all of the corruption and everything we keep talking about is simply because of a lack of transparency in pricing. Diesel today has a transparent market. Nobody, there's never been a scarcity of diesel, because as long as there is a price in the market that is determined by market forces, there is always going to be supply of diesel. So you must understand that it's not a problem that is a conundrum that we can't understand. The only reason why we have a scarcity of petroleum today is simply because NNPC are the only ones who are able to import because of the price differential. Now, if you remove that price differential today and you make it such that the price of petroleum products, especially PMS, is now open and transparent, you're going to find private sector people who come in and start to import like they're doing for AGO. And once that happens, you will never have the situation that you have today, because people are in the business of making profits. As long as I can do it in a profitable way, I'm going to do it. And that's where we need to solve. We need to ensure that we pressure the government to say whatever the cost, be it political, be it financial, let us have a transparent pricing regime for PMS. And then allow everyone to be able to import once they have a licensing, and once you can test the products that they're bringing in to be sure that they're fit for consumption by the Nigerians. Once you have done that, you will solve the problem of scarcity. Okay. Scarcity, as you know, is usually driven by a demand and supply shortfall. And that's exactly what we're dealing with today. If there was supply and the pricing was an equilibrium price, we would not have a scarcity. It's as simple as that. Of course, the NNPC will come and say, oh, his supply constraints, his logistics constraints. Of course, why doesn't diesel have the same logistic constraints? Why is this constraint only restricted to to PMS. You understand what I'm saying?
Of course, I do.
It's a contrived problem.
I do.
It's a contrived problem.
Of course. As simply as it seems it's not something that the Nigerian government might be willing to immediately deal with when you look at the solutions that you prefer this morning. Femi Oladehin, Senior Partner, Argentil Capital Management Ltd. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.